Moving on to end of year three approval process. Okay, so assuming all of your data has been successfully posted in CalPads, meaning all of your SILA RFEFs, you've updated all of your SILA records, your stats, your incident records, and then you've exited all of your students from CalPads, then then you can now move on to your certification process. Okay, so the certification process involves, let's see here. So in end of year three, it involves two approvals, meaning you need to approve level one for LEA approval, and then you also need to have your SELPA approve your certification. So for those new to CalPAS, you should see end of year three, behavioral incident absenteeism cumulative enrollment. So this is the name of that submission prior to post redesign, and that's why one of the LAs were asking if that has to change. So we will send that up to our management to have it updated if necessary. But for you guys to be able to access this page, you need um, the data certifier role and end of year three reports role, okay, to be able to view the reports within it. So the data certifier role will give you access to this in CalPads, and you'll be able to look at the problems or any certification errors. So let's just go straight to demo because I thought there was a slide for that. But so
This year,
in
demo means demolition, not demonstration.
hey, but you're right, Nate. I agree. So So if you go to CalPads, you'll see your end of year certification by going to the certification status. Now, as I mentioned, you should be able to see end of year three, and then you will see initially your total errors, and broken down into fatal errors and warnings. Okay. So if you click on this, it brings you to the certification details. The certification details provides you a summary of the current snapshot revision that you have if you haven't certified yet, or if you haven't LA approved, or if you haven't self approved yet, or if you haven't checked this as in review. This will be your default revision status. It's revised and certified. Now, if for some reason you've already clicked on LA approved, then you will see a different version here. You will have an LA approved version here on top of a revised uncertified version if you made additional changes after doing that. So this will allow you to toggle between different versions of the snapshot. Okay? So the certification details gives you the revision create date and the revision ID. It also lists potentially the SELPA who will be doing the second approval that you're under. The reason why end of year three require a SELPA is because there are potentially special ed students who may be involved in incidents. And so part of that would be your SELPA approval for those incident behaviors or any suspensions or expulsions for those offenses committed by your special education students. And then here is your certification validation. This will potentially provide you a list of errors, certification errors that you still need to resolve before looking at reports. Okay, so certification errors for those new to CalPads um, are different from your submission errors. The errors you encounter during upload of files, that's what we call submission errors or IVRs. And it's based on the data, on the quality of the data included in that file that you were uploading. Certification errors, on the other hand, are records within CalPads that has to be validated again to meet certain validations or standards that would then be included um, into the reports. So we sometimes cross-validate between different file types, like between SCNR and sync or Sears or Sila. All of those stuff are are valid. All of those file types are cross-validated. Okay, so here are some of your potential certification errors. You may also have warning summaries, and then at the bottom, you also have the certification reports. The certification reports, this assuming you've already resolved all the errors and you're down to zero errors. That's the only time you should be reviewing your certification reports, because it doesn't make sense for you to go straight to reports and review them and wonder why some are missing. So you first have to clear this, because some of the any record that trigger errors will not be included on your certification reports. Okay? So once you've cleared your certification report, you've reviewed this after you've cleared all the errors, all of this will have green check marks. And then there will be a box here that would then require you to check on, saying you're signing yourself away and telling us that you have accurate data in this report. So check that. And that's the only time when your LEA approved button will be activated and clicked on. For now, even if you clear your errors, review the reports, you won't see this or and check this, you won't have the LA approve button active, because we've disabled that functionality, because we are introducing additional um, certification data discrepancy errors in the mix that you need to resolve here. Let's move on to the last one, which is the snapshot history. If you are in a submission that requires self-approval, this section here, this tool, revision ID, is a very useful tool for you to communicate with your SELPA. So let's say you've already approved, your SELPA approved, but then your SELPA says, okay, there are some discrepancies, but I won't disapprove. Just take advantage of the revised uncertified version, the parallel snapshot revisions that you have in CalPads. So if your SELPA is still in SELPA approval and you made changes in CalPads, you just give them this revision ID. Let's say you made changes in CalPads, you got a new snapshot, and if you want your SELPA to review this, you just give them this revision ID, and then on their end, they have to look at the revised uncertified version of that report and make sure that the revision ID matches, and that's where they should be able to see the right or review the right version of that report. If they say yes, then that's where you then switch to you then click on disapprove, and then switch to revise uncertified, and then do the approval process again. There is a tutorial in the CalPads YouTube channel that Nate and Marshall and Sly produced that discusses that process. So there is a short version and there is a long version. So either way, if you have time, just view those. So it's the snapshot revision process. It's under CalPads Intro Basics, CalPad Snapshot and Revision. Nate discusses the long version, and our analyst Alex Manriquez discusses the short version of it. So you can either watch either of it or watch both. It depends on your preference. So we have a question: when will the LEA approval button reappear after July 1st? We don't have an ETA on that, but the goal is once the data certification data discrepancy errors are implemented in CalPads, that's when uh, we activate the approval process button. So as I've mentioned, I've been referring to the data discrepancy. So let's see here. Let me just switch here to a different LEA. So by end of June, which is should be next week, um, we will be introducing additional certification errors in CalPEDS. So this would be your certification discrepancy. Let's see here. If CalPEDS will bring it up, come on. So I'm on the test environment, and so they might be deploying right now. So hopefully this works. I guess not, Nate. It got demolished again.
Demolished is right.
You called it. Way to jinx it, Nate.
I stopped doing demonstrations years ago because test is test. They took away our
Yeah,
training environment.
yep, that's right. So anyway, here is let's just go to an LAA that has those data discrepancy certification before I just do a demo on that. So let's go to Nate's LAA. It's Nate Thomas Unified. Just
That's
kidding.
Sean's
It's
joke.
yeah, I just if Sean is here, you gave me an
Yeah.
idea, Sean. So so we're at Nate Thomas Unified. This is Nate's test LA. Just kidding. This is a real district here in Sacramento, but we just want it. Let's just treat it as Nate's LA. So na Thomas Unified. Oh, there you go. Thank you for that joke, Sean. So na Thomas Unified is a test has a test data for the certification data discrepancy. Essentially, the certification discrepancy are just file type errors, which was supposed to be under the data discrepancies section. But since that has not been working as desired, we are moving some of those errors here in the certification detail section. So Natomas Unified will show you here. Look, you have sync errors, SIGA error file types on top of your certification errors. So, if you are a veteran of CalPAS, you shouldn't be seeing these file type errors. It should always be here in the upload view submission. But then, because of those post redesign and in our hopes of um, uploading or posting files faster, we just broke down the different validations into two sub-levels of sections. So you might get your IVRs. If all of your records pass, there might be data discrepancies down the road. But since this is not working, those some of those data discrepancies will be implemented in the certification page. So let me just look at Maria that has not been activated yet. So let's go to the CalPADS error list here. Let's see here. I'm sorry if I thought I had it here. Downloads. Okay, let's just download it here instead. So you have your error list. So the data discrepancies that will potentially appear here will be, since you can't see this yet, just for you guys to know what are the errors that will be potentially included here or triggered for your records. Just go to the specific file type. So let's go to student incident in the error list. You'll have this data discrepancy column. If you filter for Y for X and then filter for fatal, any data discrepancy that shows fatal will be included in the validation. So you will potentially get some some of those errors here. To resolve them, just go to the error list and you will find suggestions on how to resolve those records later on. For now, you won't be able to see that, but maybe end of June, first week of July, that's when you will see these errors. So let's move back to a demo. So I'll just give you a demo of two errors just to speed up the process here. So I'm going to certification status. We have our test training Berkeley Unified page here. So here are your potential errors you might get on top of those data discrepancy errors later on. So first is CERT1. CERT1 is an easy fix, but then you'll have to wait for CDE to fix it for you. So if you have a CERT1, it normally triggers for a school that do not have enrollments this year, meaning any schools that may have closed in the middle of the year or closed prior to this academic year and it's still showing here. Um, if you have a cert one, please send in a service ticket to CalPads and request us to take out that school from the expected schools table. So in the Q&A yesterday, I believe there is an issue with the tables created during post redesign, and so some of these schools have been incorporated in the expected schools table, and so that's the reason why you're getting a cert one. So just send us a ticket saying, hey, this school has been closed for a while, it's causing a cert one, please remove this from the list. That way, um, all of those, once this issue has been resolved, then we will notify you that the issue is resolved. Also, if this is a valid cert1 and it's not caused by whatever table CD had messed up, if it's still a valid cert1 and it still won't come out, just send in a service ticket and we will send it up to CDE and they'll take it off from end of year validations. Okay. And then, of course, you have your CERT 4, which is common. You've already figured that out. CERT 67, again, this is a common error. Just send us, we just need a SIGA record for your students this year, since you have a student who is primary enrolled in CalPads. And then CERT 112, if you haven't closed enrollments from last year, then you have to close that. CERT 131, CERT 131 triggers when you haven't exited your enrollments this year yet. So if majority of your enrollments haven't been updated with exits, then expect CERT 131 to have close to your total enrollment. CERT 128 is just stating that you have to submit a stats record for a student in CalPad. So let's look at this. Again, when do we submit stats records? Just to quiz you guys, some audience participation here. When do we submit stats records? Nate hinted at earlier. And what particular set of students do you need to submit stats records? So it's in the prior slides that Nate reported. So essentially, these are for your primary and short-term enrollments in CalPads. So if a student has a one-day enrollment, then which was not exited with an N470, then they are required to have a stats record in CalPads. So then let's say, hey, what if I have a student who is in NPS? Or what if I have a student who is in home and hospital? What do you do with those? Or you have a one-day enrollment for students who you reported just so you could reflect a graduated exit or diploma. Are they? Yes, exam indicator Y in stats. Yes, you still need to report those stats records. More often than not, CERT 128 triggers for those group of students. Okay, so just because the students are in a one-day enrollment, in our home and hospital majority of the year, or in NPS, you still need to submit a stats record and indicate a Y indicator. Okay, otherwise you will get a CERT 128. So Thank you to Nate and Marshall and Sky for producing this video. So if you want more details on resolving a CERT 128, just go to this one. So 129. This is an error I love to resolve. So 129 is just stating that, hey, the expected attendance that you indicated in your STAS record, expected attendance days is greater than the total enrollment days. Okay, so sometimes you have these errors, and so this normally happens if you have students who were enrolled closer to the end of the year, like around April or May, and you haven't exited their enrollments yet. Okay, so if you have those tasks, if you submitted a STAS record and you haven't exited the student's enrollment yet, then chances are you will get a CERT 129. So for CERT 129, it always looks at, it tries to compute the total days based on the enrollment exit. So if you don't have an enrollment exit yet and you submitted a STAS record, by default, CalPAS will use May 15 as your uh, as the default exit date on the computation. And so if you haven't submitted an exit for the student and you have the student enrolled around May or later April, and you have a calculation that is incorrect, then you will get a CERT 129. The easiest fix is just to submit the um, exit date or exit reason for that student. Now, if you've already exited the student and you are still getting a CERT 131, that's when you have to make sure you have your computations right. Okay. So here is let's just go to that student. Sorry, Nate, if I'm taking your time on this one.
No, take all the time you need. It's great.
So we have your CERT 129. And then I have a tool that is really helpful when calculating days. So I have if you Google duration days calculator and go to this website, time and date, this is a nifty tool for you guys to use when calculating days. Okay. So let's look at this student, SSID. So you have sauce starter. The student enrolled on Feb 17, and then a stats record was reported for that student. So if you have the stats here and you haven't exit the student, then of course exit the student and hopefully assume that you have reported the stats days correctly. And by submitting an exit it clears the error, then that is the issue. However, sometimes if let's say you have an exit date here that is 6/2, and then you had an expected days of 182, then there might be a discrepancy on your calculation. So to check that, let's use 217 here on our nifty tool. 02 17 2000 oh, 22, and then let's say your end date was June, oh no, not June, May 05 28 2022. Include end date in calculation, and then count only work days. Exclude weekends and public holidays. Nope. There you go. So you could do that and calculate the days you have here. So essentially, from Feb 17 to May 28, you should only be reporting an expected attendance days of 72. However, in this record, even if you put an exit there, the expected attendance days would be way off. It's 182. It appears like the student started in August. And so that's a trigger for CERT 129. So make sure that if you get a CERT 129, number one, exit the student. And if that doesn't clear the error, go to this section, just calculate the correct days and make sure those days are reflected here. So this should be 72 and not 182. Okay, and then the attended days also should go down, uh, appropriate to the adjustments you have for the expected attendance days. So let's say the student was there the whole year, the whole time since Feb 17. So the expected day should be 72. The attendance day should be also 72, assuming all of these are zero. So that's how to resolve um, the expected days. So also there's a question here. Kyron, should holidays be excluded? Yeah, or you could even include them. It depends on your calculation of your attendance days. So if you include those, then of course that would increase your expected days, right? Then again, if let's say you're in a area that were impacted by forest fires during October, December last year, or at any point during this academic year, and you had a state waiver, you also have to move those days based on the actual expected days that you have. Okay, so make sure that you also make the adjustments based on those scenarios. So that's how to resolve a CERT 129. And then, of course, once all of these errors are gone, you then move on to reviewing your reports. Okay, so once you wait for a snapshot and the errors go down to zero, you've solved your data discrepancies, you've resolved your certification errors, it's down to zero, then we now move on to reviewing your report counts. Okay, so how do we address also another tip? um, just a recommendation, when we get into resolving errors that included data discrepancies, we recommend you address those data discrepancies first, because there is a greater possibility that you would be resolving two birds in using one stone, so to speak. So once you resolve your data discrepancies, it may potentially resolve any um, certification errors that might go with it. And so that's why if you have to resolve data discrepancies first.